All right. I said yesterday that I was going to do my live at 10 a.m. And that was just something that I came up with in my spirit. But I have learned that maybe 10 a.m. isn't going to be the time. But I'm showing up, and that is the point. I am a little late on this, but I am here. So this is today's conversation. What up? K-Love in the house. Coming to us soon here in Houston. And now that I am also, K-Love, now that I am back actively on the gram, I am going to be sharing your event. Go ahead and post it. What is it? The August 27th, I believe, or August 28th. So I am back on the gram. I am back in these internet streets, as I like to say. And to reintroduce myself back to these internet streets, I am talking about the ABCs of communication, connection, and speaking. Okay. And so in that space, the ABCs every single day for the next 26 days, well, I guess including today, I am going to dedicate a letter of the alphabet, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, all the way through. Today is A. And yesterday I was able to source some suggestions for what we're going to concentrate on in the space of A. And that is this big word that we hear about all of the time. People are yelling it from the mountaintops about authenticity. Authenticity. Being authentic. Now I'm outside, so I'm also going to be kind of nosy as to who all is around me, because you can't just be sitting in your car, right? But that's what I'm going to be doing right now. But authenticity, how is that showing up in the way that we're communicating? How is that showing up in the way that we are connecting with people? And for those of you who find yourself speaking a lot, whether it's for work, whether it is to grow your business, whether you're doing panels, podcasts, conferences, and keynotes, I'm going to also talk about that. So authenticity, we hear it all the time. And I always say that it is kind of like this woo-woo word where you know what it is when you see it, but on someone else. But it's like, how do you grow it? How do you express it? How do you actually embody it? What does that look like? And oftentimes people say to themselves, oh, it's totally about keeping it real, right? And I would definitely say, I'm just going to charge my phone real quick if I can. But in the space of thinking about authenticity and keeping it real, so to speak, what does that really mean? So in the space of authenticity, and I looked up the definition, and from my memory, authenticity is being true to who you are. It is being true to your values. It is being true to your spirit and how you show up in those spaces and how you're able to express that. And more importantly, it is about showing up authentically, being true to who you are when your environment, when aspects of your workplace or where you live or even who you hang out with is telling you that you should be showing up any other type of way. So in a way, when you're being authentic, you have these societal pressures, you have these little subtle pushes to show up some type of way, to be some type of way. And is that true to who you are? And if it's not true to who you are, then you have to exercise some confidence. You have to exercise some courage in order to go against how people are expecting you to show up in any given space. So think about what your spirit is telling you. Think about how your spirit is trying to express itself. Think about your values. I'll give you an example. Me personally, two of my values are champagne and Crown Royal. Those are two of my last values. And I share that wherever I go. even if I'm in a very corporate space where it's supposed to be extra, professional, and we kind of act like we don't drink. Well, some of us don't, but champagne is one of my values because I just feel like it makes you want to celebrate, right? I keep bottles of champagne in my refrigerator because I believe that there is always a time to celebrate. There's always something to celebrate. I'm checking this real quick because I don't know if it was in the sun. I don't want it to get, super duper burnt out. Crown Royal is one of my values. One, because it reminds me of where I've come from, where I've been. Crown Royal has been a drink of choice of mine for a very long time. I can't indulge in it as much as I used to because I just wake up the next day tired. Okay. But I share those even when it doesn't feel like I should, even when I feel like it's not acceptable, even when I feel like it's not respectable or whatever. You gonna learn these two values. So again, when we think about authenticity, think about your values, think about what's true to you, think about what your spirit is saying, and sometimes what's authentic to you might also even be news to you. You may show up one day and not think that you would have a position or an opinion or a perspective. It's something that didn't even exist for you a month ago, 2 months ago. But in the moment, your spirit says that this is what's authentic to me. So I wanted to offer just kind of a baseline understanding, kind of a generic, it can go way deeper than that, about what authenticity is. Now, how does authenticity show up in the way that we communicate? How does authenticity show up in the way that we're building connections with people? And how does that show up when we're speaking? Now, I'm also going to share perhaps one reason why it doesn't show up. One reason why you feel like your authenticity, your true self is being stifled. And it could be because of the world and how it's set up. It could be because of the people around you and the silent expectations and the subtle, pushes or nudges they might be, leaning you towards. But I know from my own personal experience, and I've learned through having conversations with other people, that one reason why our authentic self doesn't show up is because there is a fear. And what is that fear? There's a fear of not being accepted. There is a fear of being ostracized. There is a fear of the consequences of showing up authentically you. And those consequences may look like, if I actually show my authentic self, I may not be included in certain conversations that can advance my career. The consequences that maybe what I share and how I share it could be held against me. The consequences could be, I might offend people just by me being true to myself. And this isn't a space of just saying you got to share all your business and you got to put it all out there. This isn't just talking about like, you're going to take me as I am and, but you're not also concentrating on growth and development and all the internal work that's required in order to elevate and become your best self. Not really talking about that, but really in the space of thinking about the fear of looking dumb, looking stupid, the fear of being judged. I think that some of those fears of not being included, being judged, being ostracized. Hey, Mylene. What's up, everybody? That fear is a kind of like a common denominator that almost doesn't ever really go away. And even when we feel like we're going into spaces fearless, there's always some type of second guessing. There's always some type of little doubt that, I don't know if I can give all of that today. There is Amanda Seales, one of her comedy shows. She talks about like, how black am I gonna have to be today? And I know that sometimes being a woman, being a person of color, and I'm gonna speak from being a black woman, we step very gingerly about how we show ourselves because it can be misconstrued. We know that it can be misconstrued. Our passion can be confused with anger. Our emotion can be confused with weakness. And so we do take into those considerations quite often. But those are the very same things that little bit by little bit tend to chip away at how we're authentically showing up. So that fear that we're going to be ostracized, we're going to be judged, we're going to be excluded, we're going to have to deal with consequences. People are going to think differently and not a good way about who we are all the limitations that stop us from showing up more authentically. There are also things that stop us from showing up authentically when we really have a goal that we're really trying to achieve and we feel like we have to kind of alter ourselves. We feel like we have to amend ourselves in order to fit in and get there. And sometimes life does require us to do that. Okay, sometimes I do have to scale back on my personality, or I got to scale back on how black I'm going to be in order to make other people feel comfortable. But doing that too much is where the compromise starts to become who you are. And then you wonder why you feel like you can't show up as yourself, or you wonder why you're exhausted in a day because you've had to suppress, you've had to set aside, you've had to compartmentalize, who you are. And we don't want to make a habit of compromising, making a habit of setting aside, amending. We don't want to make that a habit, because then it becomes that much more difficult to be our authentic selves. So those are all some of the reasons. And I'm pretty sure you probably got some other reasons. What's up, Adrian? Probably got some other reasons as to why your authentic self doesn't always show up. So this is where authenticity now, when you say to yourself, I'm facing those fears, I'm overcoming, those challenges, those consequences. I'm willing to take a little bit of risk today. And it could just be, I'm taking a risk today to share more of who I am. You might then ask yourself, well, what aspect of myself should I be sharing? How do I get into a practice of being more authentic and showing up more authentically? And how do I use the way that I communicate and the way that I connect with people to kind of be that vehicle of expressing my authenticity? And so the practice that I'm offering here is to think about maybe that one thing about yourself that you typically keep to yourself in certain environments. And, I'm just going to use work as an example, right? But even sometimes we feel like we can't show up authentically even around our family, even around our loved ones, because they know us to be something. And now that I've grown, now that I've evolved, now that I've leveled up, there are certain aspects of me that aren't me anymore. So they're expecting you to show up as a former self that existed a couple years ago. And that ain't the self that exists right now, right? So how do you show up and kind of reteach people? And how do you then kind of instill within yourself, this is how I'm showing up authentically? So this is the practice. What's that one thing that you normally wouldn't share that at least for the day, I'm going to share it? At least for maybe the month, I'm going to share it. I gave the example of how I share Crown Royal and champagne as some of my values. And there was a very brief moment where I was like, in these corporate spaces, I'm not going to share that as part of my values, because we go through values and stuff and some of the content that we offer our clients. I'm not going to share that, it's champagne and Crown Royal. Crown Royal, I know it's a lot of people that drink Crown Royal, but stereotypically, Crown Royal is kind of a black thing. Correct me if I'm wrong. I could be making a big assumption, but Crown Royal is like a real black drink, right? And I don't want to be too black for some of my audiences, right? So I would keep that to myself because I don't want to be judged. I don't want to be stereotyped. But I decided that's just going to be one of the things that I'm going to share. Crown Royal champagne. It is true to who I am, and I'm going to share it. And it's a little practice of that, something that I'm going to share. And you have to pick and choose which elements as a practice. So now when I'm communicating, when I'm sharing, when I'm connecting with people, that's something that I know that I'm going to share that I probably normally wouldn't. There have been instances that we've been in situations where we've wanted to share something true to ourselves, maybe on the personal side, and we thought, this isn't the place for it. This isn't the place for it. Now, granted, use your own discernment, use your own judgment as to, when you're going to share aspects of yourself. But there are probably 8 times out of 10, certain things that you want to share about yourself are acceptable. It's just the stories that we make up in our mind about how we'll be perceived, how we'll be judged, that there might be consequences that we decide for ourselves that it's not appropriate for us to share. So what's that one thing about yourself that is true to who you are? Whatever the case, whenever the case. My hair flopping around. What is that one thing that you can start sharing that you normally just reserve for yourself, for the people in your close, tight networks? Here's an example. Cash Money Records taking over for the 99 and the 2000. Back That Ass Up is my absolute favorite song. Absolute favorite song. One time, I think I won a pitch competition, and they asked me what song I wanted to come out to. This was before I actually gave the pitch. They asked me which song. I immediately thought, Cash Money Records taking over for the 99 and the 2000. That is my song. It speaks to me. It gets me pumped up. I be feeling cool. I be feeling sexy. I be feeling all of the things. But part of me said, I don't know if that's going to be too much. I mean, this is a pitch competition. I'm pitching my business, right? Maybe I should do something more professional. We might talk about that later. Maybe I should do something more professional. And I said, bump that. I said, put on Cash Money Records taking over for the 99 and the 2000. And when I tell you, it lit up the room because people weren't expecting it. People just were like, oh my gosh, I can't believe she. Now, it was the edited version, y'all. It wasn't even the explicit version. But they're like, oh my God, I cannot believe it. But they was turning up in their seat. It was this in the seat. People was trying to do it just a little bit. But I was out there. I said, come on, y'all better rock with me on this one. That's an aspect of there are things that we might not do in certain environments, certain situations, around certain people, because of the stories that we tell ourselves of how we're going to be judged, how we're going to be perceived, how we might be ostracized. Gerald Neg, I think Guer, what's up? Take it for 99, gonna do it every time, every single time. But we put these stories in our head, and sometimes they are true, because somebody in that audience probably did judge me. Somebody probably said, that's not appropriate. But whatever, that's a risk that I'm willing to take so that I can find more comfort in being true to myself rather than amending who I am to provide comfort to others. Is that the thing that you're always willing to do, to make other people more comfortable than you are comfortable with yourself? And so it's one thing, and that's what I'm asking y'all today. I'm going to close this out. But that's the one thing that I'm asking y'all to do today, is what's that one thing that you might share about yourself that you normally wouldn't, that you probably are a little apprehensive about sharing? What's that one thing? And allow yourself over the course of the next coming days, the next coming weeks, months, whatever, for that to be the thing that you share. I'll provide another example. I am the world leading subject matter expert on the cult classic Coming to America. There are rooms that I am in where I think it's not going to resonate. There are rooms that I think that I'm in, that I might be judged for being too black, right? That I might be stereotyped. But that's something that I share because it is true to me. I love that movie. And then when I communicate that I love that movie, it sparks conversation. It gives people permission to show up and be a little bit more of themselves that day. The exercise of courage that I use in order to share something about myself that I typically might fear or be hesitant about sharing gives other people permission to then do the same. Adrian says, I'm a Coming to America expert as well. Look, I'm surprised I'm not even a part of some type of like Facebook group or something like that, or following a Coming to America Instagram page, because there's still always some details to be learned. But that's an example again, and we all have these fears. We all have these things where if I share this aspect of myself, it might come back and bite me in the butt. It might have a consequence to it. I might be judged. I might be left out. I might not be included. But are you always going to compromise the comfort that you have with yourself for the comfort that you provide for others? And it does take a certain level of confidence to kind of show up authentically. It does require a practice of courage, an exercise of courage. But that confidence and that courage grows with every time that you find more comfort in sharing aspects of yourself. So ask yourself, what is that one thing that I would normally keep to myself that I might share in this conversation, that I could share in this engagement with these people, that it might seem too soon for me to share this information about myself. This is another conversation talking about small talk. Let's get deep. Really share stuff about yourself, right? So ask yourself what that one thing is, whatever it might be. Challenge yourself to start sharing that. And the second call to action that I'll throw out to you is, if you don't know what that thing is yet, in the space of exercising self-awareness, as you start to operate in different rooms and in different groups and having different conversations with different types of people, and even with people that you know, when you show up in spaces and you know how people always talk about when you bite your tongue, like we bite our tongue, we bite our own authenticity. We hold back on it. So when you are showing up in spaces and you feel that resistance, that you have to put on a facade, that you have to protect, that you have to kind of hide, that you have to diminish, that you have to kind of subside, when you feel that resistance of that feeling, ask yourself, what is it that I'm trying to subside? What is it that I'm trying to kind of distance? What is it that I'm actually trying to, hide? And when you ask yourself, what is it that I'm trying to hide? That's probably the thing you probably just need to go ahead and show. Let the cat out the bag. Let them know who you are. And if you're also wondering, like, what else should I share about myself? Think about your values. What's important to you? What guides you? How do you talk about that? Like, I gave examples of stuff that might make me seem too black, might stereotype me, but sometimes the things that express our authenticity are the values that we embody, that we talk about. I mean, of course, one of my values is communication. Another one of my values is connection, but it shows up in almost every conversation. I'm talking about something about communication. I'm talking about something about connection. I'm talking about something about, like, how are we actually relating with one another? How are we interacting with one another? And I talk about it from such a genuine space. That within itself is what allows me to be perceived and felt as how I'm being authentic. Hey, Kalish. You came in at the right time. Yes, girl. What up, Matthew? So, with all of that being said, this is the communication, the ABCs of communication, connection, and speaking. And for the next, this is one letter down. Look, math ain't my ministry. So I got, because 26 letters in the alphabet, I got 25 more. It's 26, right? Okay. I got 25 more. Tomorrow is going to be letter B. What is something that shows up in the way that we communicate, maybe the way that we speak, that starts with the letter B, right? Is it being bold? Is it like being bossy? Is it bold? Is it being bad? I don't know. Y'all let me know. Slide in the DMs and let me know what you want to hear about in the space of communication, speaking, and connection, and put it in my DM so that I know what I need to be talking about tomorrow. But that is what I'm going to be doing for the next couple of days. The ABCs of communication, connection, and speaking. Today was authenticity. We fear it because of the consequences, because of the stereotypes, because of being judged. That's why we don't show up as ourselves, because we feel like it's not going to be appropriate, or we feel like someone else is going to be like, ugh, oh my God, ugh, right? Forget them, right? And then the 2 action steps is, 1, decide what that one thing is that you want to start sharing about yourself that you would normally hesitate on, right? And if you don't know what that one thing is, then start to become more self-aware in your conversations, so that when you start to feel that resistance, like, ooh, I was about to share something, but then you decided not to, that's probably the thing that you should be sharing, right? So use this as a space of discovery. Think about when it's something about myself that I want to share, communicate that. It is the one thing that you share that's authentic to who you are, that's also true to someone else. That's what also facilitates connection. And now you're having a conversation. And now you cooler with somebody that you didn't even think that you was going to be all that cool with. That is the message for today, ladies and gentlemen. I thank y'all for hanging out with me. I'm going to be back at it tomorrow, somewhere around the same time. I said 10 a.m., but I think I got a meeting, so I'm going to figure this out. But I appreciate y'all joining me. Slide in my DMs. Let me know what the conversation for the B tomorrow, the ABCs of communication, connection, and speaking. And I will see y'all tomorrow.